Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wolfpacker Show. My name is Ethan McDowell. I am here with Noah Fleischman, and we are back for another game week preview. We are here to talk about NC State's road trip to Clemson, the ACC opener, one of the two main matchups that we've had circled on this schedule for months. It's one of those games where NC State has another opportunity to make a statement on a national stage. I thought, personally, we'd have more questions answered about this team at this point, Noah. We really don't. There is still a lot. I feel like there's still a lot we need to learn about NC State football in 2024. And we're going to talk about some of the questions we still have. We're going to give our predictions for this game and break down how Clemson matches up with NC State. Before we do that, a quick note that we're both writers for the Wolfpacker.com. You can find all of our work over there. It's NC State's site on the On3 network, the fastest growing college football, recruiting, basketball network out there. Whether you're looking for team analysis, more detailed predictions from us, my explanation on why the offensive line is actually pretty solid right now for the Pack, it's all up there on the Wolfpacker.com. Plus, NC State's also going to host a 4-star Georgia commit in a few weeks on campus. If you want to learn more about that, I think I'm going to publish it right after this episode goes up on YouTube. So go check that out all on the Wolfpacker.com. It's 50% off your annual subscription to do it right now. I kind of buried the lead there, but you can do it. You can get an annual subscription to our site for 50% off the annual price. It's a great deal. And we'd really appreciate if you go check out thewolfpacker.com. All right, Noah, let's talk about Clemson, the number 21 team in the country. 1-1 this season. They got beat decisively by Georgia and Atlanta in the season opener, and then turned around by putting 56 points on App State in the first half, the preseason Sun Belt favorite. So, two polar opposite performances from the Tigers. I don't think we know that much about them, especially coming off of a bye week in week 3. This is the second consecutive week where NC State's playing a team coming off a bye week. So, that's a weird scheduling quirk, but there you are. And NC State, first true road test of the year is in Death Valley, a place where NC State hasn't won in a long time. No, let me get a gut check from you. How are you feeling, just on the surface level, about NC State versus Clemson? What are your expectations for this game?
Yeah, it's an interesting feeling, right? You think about it going into a game with a true freshman quarterback. Some teams wouldn't feel great about going to Death Valley with the true freshman quarterback at the helm and making his first career start. But I'm feeling pretty good about it. I mean, honestly, it's Clemson, a team that's had NC State's number at home. It's been since 2002 that NC State has won a game there. And I believe since 1998, since they won as an unranked team going to Clemson. Torrey Holt had a big game that day. I think 11 catches, 200 yards, a couple touchdowns. But they might need one of those efforts out of a receiver this week to have it happen. But overall, it's kind of one of those games where you don't think I'd be feeling this positive about it, even though it's a 20.5-point spread. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. NC State is the severe underdog, but they play better as the underdog, and I think that we might see them rise to the occasion again this week. Not saying a win per se, but saying they might show up because of how people are doubting them. And don't get me wrong, Dave Doran's definitely telling them what the national media thinks of this team right now.
They're 3 touchdown underdogs. That's a lot of points, Noah. That is I get it. We were there for the Tennessee game. We talked about the Tennessee game extensively. That was a terrible performance by NC State. 20.5 points is a lot of points. Because Clemson, first of all, I picked them to win the ACC this year. I think the eulogies of their demise are premature at this point. This is also not Clemson of 2015, 16, 17, whenever, right? This Clemson team is beatable, and I just think the spread is wild. I think 20 points is a lot. But you also kind of have to understand it because there is so much uncertainty around what we're going to see from NC State Saturday. CJ Bailey looked great in the second half against Louisiana Tech. He completed 7 straight passes at one point, led NC State on 3 consecutive scoring drives. He looked really, really solid. His talent is clear. Absolutely. Death Valley is a tough place to play for anybody. It's a tough place to play as a freshman. Last year, if you look at the formula for how NC State beat Clemson, in Carter Finley Stadium. They had an absolutely nuclear performance from Casey Concepcion. He had 2 touchdowns, believe it or not, scored multiple touchdowns in a game, and had over 50 rushing yards and over 50 receiving yards. And Noah, that was NC State's first game out of the bye week last year as well, right?
I believe so. Yeah, definitely.
So that game kind of kicked off that back half of the season that really salvaged that year. At that point in the year, both teams were 4-3, and it sent NC State on a really, really good trajectory for the rest of the season. So I think you need another nuclear performance from KC. I think after getting held to 25 yards against Louisiana Tech, I think NC State will come out and try to find some new ways to kind of get him the ball in space, especially down the field as well, because they were trying. They were doing the pop passes. They were doing the screens against Louisiana Tech, and it wasn't really working. Louisiana Tech was locked in on taking him out of the game, and they were mostly successful. Let's start offensively, Noah. What's a key to NC State's success? Because I think it starts with KC, but there's plenty of other things you can point to.
The offensive line is going to be key this week. I think that is going to be where this game is won or lost. Tennessee proved it a little bit. They were able to get in the backfield and won the game, especially on their offensive line. But, it's just a game where the offensive line is going to need to hold up. They were inspired to play when CJ was put in because they knew a lot was on their shoulders. When a freshman quarterback comes in the game, they need to give him time to throw. They need to open up running lanes, establish the run. That's the biggest point. If they offensive line's playing well, which they took a step forward against Louisiana Tech, allowed one quarterback pressure, and just averaged over 4 yards per carry. That's improvements on both sides of the offensive line. I think that's really important. We want to see them keep taking that step forward. If NC State can establish the run, that'll take pressure off CJ Bailey. He doesn't have to feel like he's got to do it all. Because if they can't and they have to throw it 40 times, it could get a little interesting. If they can keep CJ Bailey between 25 and 30 passing attempts in the game, I think the NC State's got a chance. If he's got to go to 40, it's going to be interesting. It's not going to be probably NC State's way. But yeah, establishing the run's big, and the offensive line is key in that. And we'll see what they can do. But getting Jordan Waters, Hollywood Smothers, Kendrick Raphael, getting that trio going early makes CJ Bailey probably a lot more comfortable than being behind the sticks with tackles for a loss on first and second down.
Yeah, so that's my main concern for this game is that we haven't seen NC State reliably take pressure off the quarterback with the rushing game. That's why I think NC State ultimately loses this game by multiple scores. We'll get into predictions later in the episode, but until I see NC State's rushing attack reliably keeping NC State in manageable down and distances, it's just tough for me to be confident, especially going into a game where Clemson's defensive front is a whole lot closer to Tennessee's than it is Louisiana Tech's, right? Like, they've got some incredible athletes up front. Peter Woods is the guy most people know. He's a game wrecker. He's going to start at defensive end for them, and he's over 300 pounds at 6'3", but can also move inside to defensive tackle. They line him up a little bit of everywhere. He is like day-to-day right now, so we're not sure if he is going to play Saturday. He did not play, I don't think, last year against NC State during his breakout freshman season. So you're looking at, if he is in the game, he is someone that could wreck the game. NC State has allowed a lot of interior pressure, especially, that has really blown up a lot of rushing plays this season. And depending on where they line Woods up, that could be an issue again. Clemson always has great defensive tackles. You can bank on that year in and year out. And that is no different this year. And until I see something like improve in the rushing game against a Power 5 team, I should say, because like you said, I think even Coach Doran said it during his press conferences this week. They took a step forward. He's not happy with where the rushing attack is, but there was at least a step forward. Now I need to see that step forward against a team like Clemson, where it's not just met at the line of scrimmage, or in the case of the Tennessee game, a lot of those rushing attempts were not only not getting yards, they were losing yards. They were losing like 3 to 5 yards on a lot of their handoffs. So NC State just needs to avoid these catastrophic plays for loss that were putting them way behind the sticks, and if they happen this week, would put CJ Bailey in a really, really tough spot. What are your expectations for CJ this week, Noah. I mean, like we've discussed plenty on the site, we've discussed on this podcast. I think we both really liked what we saw from him. It was a very encouraging performance. What is, in your opinion, a reasonable expectation for CJ? You mentioned maybe throwing it 25 to 30 times a game, but what do you want to see from him in his first start?
I think my expectations are high for him. I think this is a guy that kind of proved he's ready for the moment against Louisiana Tech. Obviously, not the same defense he's going to see against Clemson, but he was thrown into a game he was not expected to play in. Started 1 for 3 with an interception, rebounded, went 7 for 7 to start the second half passing, got into a rhythm and went. I think if he can avoid a turnover, avoid a bad decision in the first, 5 or 6 passing attempts, and he can find that rhythm, because it seems like he's a guy. Once he gets in a rhythm, he is fine. He goes through. He can find receivers downfield. He's comfortable, gets the ball out. I think I'm confident. I think a reasonable expectation for him in this game is 200 passing yards. You can think. If he gets anything more than that, NC State's happy with it. If he can throw for a couple of scores, they're happy with it. But I think 200 yards is reasonable. He threw for 156 basically in just the second half alone. So if you get to 225 against Clemson's defense, I think NC State is really, really happy with it. But this is a guy, he's not going to be phased by the atmosphere, not phased by the opponent. He's played against elite competition his whole life. We have a story on the Wolfpacker.com today about, just that, about why he's ready and why his high school career is important. He played at Chaminade Madonna, one of the top high school programs in the country, and started for a sophomore, junior, and senior years. This isn't a guy who's just some high school players start for their junior, senior year, go to college. He started as a sophomore on one of the best teams in the country, and I think that says a lot about who he is and about the guy that he is, because last thing, kind of to wrap it up, he came into the game against Louisiana Tech with a smile on his face. They're down by 11 at halftime. He's in the locker room smiling, acting like everything's fine. And at Chaminade Madonna, he did similar things where he could pick his teammates up, rally around him, and go. And I think seeing that in his first game ever is really, really important. And now if they fall behind at Clemson, I don't think he'll panic like some young players might and be like, oh, I got to do it all myself. He's not the kind of guy that's going to think I need to do everything. He's the kind of guy that knows how to get a team out of a hole.
There's something to be said for youthful optimism, right? Like I was talking about it with someone earlier today, and you see him take off for a scramble, diving head first on his quarterback, sneak into the end zone. He's playing with someone with a little bit of, reckless abandon, because he doesn't know any better at the college level. He's just playing ball. Like, he's just playing football and having fun while he's doing it. And there's something to be said for that. Like, he's not going in with incredibly high expectations around him, right? Like Grayson McCall, he went into his first few games in a Wolfpack uniform, and Wolfpack fans expected a lot from that guy. CJ's like, shoot, man, he can go in and just play football and just have fun, and that's what you saw a lot. You mentioned at the high school level, you saw that a lot, where he was just having fun out there. He had it played for an incredibly talented high school team. He lost 2 games over his final 3 years of high school. He's a winner. He knows what it takes to win. And I think it's pretty clear based on what we saw last game. He knows how important it is to avoid getting rattled and just carrying that confidence as a quarterback, and how that can help lead a team as well. He's a freshman. He doesn't need to be like the vocal rah-rah leader, but he does need to lead by example. And I think it'll help that he's going to go in there. And I don't think we're going to see him panic. I don't think the moment's going to be too big for him. And, NC State surrounds him with enough experience where the leaders can pick him up when needed. So I think as long as we see him go into Death Valley and, like we said, he doesn't panic and plays a decent game, he's going to make mistakes. He's a freshman, and that's just something that he's going to have to learn from. But when he made mistakes against Louisiana Tech, he bounced back in a big way. I'm really not even going to be looking at his numbers. I'm going to be looking at his response to those adverse moments Saturday afternoon. Because as important as Saturday's game is, CJ is someone that could be the future of NC State's program. And I think we could learn just a lot about, what he's made of in Death Valley. And that's exciting. You mentioned how you're kind of feeling good about this game, even though I don't think either of us are going to pick them to win it. It's just like, you can see the hope that he produces within this program. And it's clear that NC State could have a special talent at quarterback. And we're going to find out a lot more about him Saturday afternoon. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's switch to the other side of the ball, Noah. Let's talk about the defense. Last year, they beat Clemson with efficient blitzing. They blitzed Cade Klubnik on, first of all, Cade Klubnik last year dropped back 54 times. They threw the ball a ton against the Wolfpack last year. I don't really expect that this year, especially with how productive Phil Maffa has been so far. Their feature back is averaging like over 6 yards a carry, I think, right? So what are you expecting out of Clemson's offense and how they're going to challenge the Wolfpack defense?
I'd expect a more balanced attack. Yeah, they're not going to throw the ball 54 times. I mean, they did partly because Will Shipley got hurt early in that game, and they kind of were forced. Phil Maffa did play well that game as well, but he wasn't the number one back like he is now, and they have confidence in him. I do think we'll see a more balanced approach from them. Clemson's got some dudes. They've got a pair of freshman receivers that can take a top off of defense pretty quick, and I think that we'll see them a little bit in this game. And this comes down to NC State's corners defending well. Aiden White and Brandon Cisse both expected to be back, according to Dave Dorn. We'll see what happens. That's Aiden for sure. I think Brandon has a pretty good chance of suiting up and getting out there. And they also know what they have, in the reserves with whether it's Devin Marshall or it's Corey Coley or even Jackson Vick. They all played really, really well a week ago. So I think NC State's corners are going to have to come up big in this game, guarding these receivers, forcing Cade Klubnik to throw the ball in tight windows. Because if you give him time to throw and you give him an open receiver, he's going to make the throw. And that's what he did against App. And he made them pay. So if it really comes down to the corners, it comes down to getting pressure on Klubnik. If they can pressure him and not let him have time to throw, it's going to be a long day for Cade. Not saying that automatically win the game for NC State, but making him uncomfortable definitely gives NC State a better chance rather than letting him sit back there, be confident and comfortable and finding his guys downfield.
Yeah. Like I was hinting at earlier, like they were opportunistic in their blitzing last year. They sent extra pressure on 14 dropbacks last year and pressured him on all 14. And quite frankly, it looked like they rattled him a little bit on those plays. He threw for, I think, 40-something yards when they blitzed on 5 completions, on 12 attempts, and also threw an interception. So blitzing, clearly it worked. NC State has been somewhat conservative with its blitzing so far this season. Part of that, I'm sure, is the last game they didn't want to leave, the backup corners on an island as much. Didn't want to leave folks without any safety help as much when they didn't have their star corners in the game. But they haven't sent a ton of pressure this year. Like you were relying last year on, like Peyton Wilson was racking up those pressure numbers, man. He was in the backfield constantly. So far, Sean Brown leads the linebacker corps with 4 pressures this season over 3 games. They're just not generating the same pass rush as they did last year. Like Red Hibbler was elite last year in his specialist role. It's been a somewhat quiet year for him so far. Davin Vann has been super disruptive. He has a sack already this season, but then also his 2 deflections that have led to pick 6. He's been awesome. I think Brandon Cleveland's been solid at the nose tackle. You just want to see more disruption. And part of that is the defense just hasn't had the opportunity to pin its ears back and go all out on the pass rush because they haven't been able to generate stops on 1st and 2nd down. So you're dealing with more 3rd and mediums and 3rd and shorts. I think this number skewed a little by a couple of long passing plays, but Louisiana Tech last week averaged 9.9 yards per play on 1st down. Tennessee's number was, I think, like 5 or something close to that. So you just need to start knocking teams back on 1st downs a lot more. They have NC State has 11 tackles for loss so far this season. It's a little over 3, almost 4 a game. That's not NC State's standard. They're number 15 out of 17 teams in the ACC right now for total sacks. The 2 teams below them have only played 2 games. It's just not the standard for the NC State's defense's disruption. They haven't played bad this year outside of the Tennessee game, but we just haven't seen the same pissed off, like NC State defense that we have become accustomed to seeing in the past few years, except I thought we started to see it against Louisiana Tech. I thought they flipped the switch kind of, and we started to see that The disruption numbers didn't really follow, but we'll see how that goes against Clemson when hopefully the secondary's back to full strength and they can maybe blitz a little bit more and show some more exotic looks and try to disrupt the Tigers. But I have full confidence that the defense is going to get better as the year goes on. Like we've said a million times on this show, Tony Gibson is one of the, if not the best in the business right now, and can find different ways to cause the quarterback problems. So I think we'll see that improve as the season goes on. It's just a question of how much of a jump can we see this weekend, right? So we'll see how that progresses.
Yeah, we will. I think, the one thing about pressure is Tony Gibson did kind of admit he wished he pressured Tennessee more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he will bring the heat against Clemson. He did get more aggressive in his play calling in the second half against Louisiana Tech, kind of knowing that they had to do something. They played a lot of zone in the first half, trying to take the pressure off those corners. But then they played man, and it paid off. They held Louisiana Tech to 3 points the rest of the way. So I think we'll see more pressure out of Tony Gibson's unit this week, knowing that they've got a freshman quarterback on their side. They need to get him good field position. And how do you do that? You get in the backfield, you put Clemson behind the chains. If they can do that, give your offense better field position, because starting on their own 29 to 30 yard line like they have the last few weeks, it's kind of tough to go 70 yards against Clemson's defense. They're going to have to try to find ways, either forcing turnovers or putting Clemson way back in its own end of the field to get him, CJ Bailey and company, around the 40, even in the 50. And if you get a turnover and you're starting plus territory, NC State will take that.
That's the crux of the issue for NC State right now, right? You can kind of boil it down the field position. The past couple years when NC State's offense has been quite frankly bad, like the offense this year, even without a consistent running game, is still better than the past couple years' offenses. And the difference was the past couple years, the defense was so elite that they were getting these really like mediocre to bad offenses, the ball at like the 40-yard line, the 45-yard line consistently, and they were working with shorter fields, and they were still able to win a lot of games because of that. The defense needs to turn it up a notch, or the offense really needs to take things to another level, because right now I think the coaches have hinted at it. They haven't been satisfied with how much complimentary football they are playing so far this year. That is the coaches and the players' favorite buzzword during press conference, complimentary football. We haven't seen it enough this year. We saw it in the second half against Louisiana Tech. Does that become a trend, or was that just them pulling away against a program that they should have been beating, quite frankly, the entire game? We'll see. It'll be interesting. I think that's a good segue as any to dive into some predictions, Noah. We're going to start with our statistical predictions. We're going to predict who's going to lead the team in rushing, receiving, and tackling. And we'll talk about our final score predictions as we wrap up. Noah, let's start with rushing. Last game, it was Kendrick Raphael coming in the game and finding some success, hurdling a defender, getting in the end zone. He had a good day. Who do you think is going to lead NC State in rushing against the Tigers?
I'm going to go with Hollywood Smothers. I think this is an opportunity, a kind of game that he can be a game changer. He's their most explosive back. I think this is a game. He hits a hole, he finds a way to break one off and kind of make in Clemson's secondary pay. I mean, he's the one that's, played the fewest college football of the three. And I think that this is an opportunity to him have his first breakout game and prove to the national audience that Hollywood Smothers is Hollywood Smothers, who he was in high school as the two-time, player of the year in the state of North Carolina. I think this is an opportunity for them to do that.
Yeah, if they can establish good blocking on like the perimeter around the tackle spots and at tight ends, and I think he could have a big day just because he's so explosive. He had sort of a slow game against Louisiana Tech, but the first two games, I thought he looked awesome. So we'll see how he performs. I'm going to go with Jordan Waters here. I know he is someone that hasn't played up to, I'm sure, his expectations so far this season, just in terms of the consistent rushing production. Not saying that's his fault at all. We've talked at length about blocking issues on this show. But let's take a look at last year. Last year against Clemson, he opened his season with 11 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown, and then 3 receptions for 46 yards. So that's over 100 yards total. And he had a big day against Clemson. And I think he told me that this is his first time going to Clemson. He's excited for that game. And I'm predicting a breakout for him. I think we're going to see The positive steps forward we saw in the blocking department, especially between the tackles for NC State against Louisiana Tech, I think we might see that carry over a little bit. Maybe Jordan Waters breaks a few tackles and can get things going. I don't think he's going to have an amazing day necessarily because Clemson's front is really, really talented. But I think he will lead NC State in rushing and will help keep NC State in more favorable down and distances than it has been so far this year. On the receiving side of things, last week it was kind of an uncharacteristically balanced week for NC State receiving. Who do you think is going to lead the pack in receiving yards against the Tigers? No.
I'm going to go with Noah Rogers, and here's why. He was targeted 6 times against Louisiana Tech. That's a season high for him in targets. It, I believe, surpassed his target total between the first 2 games combined. And this is a guy that is due for kind of a game to break out. He rises to the occasion of his competition level. He's a really good player. Clemson wanted him at one point. Now he's going down to play them. I think this is a kind of game that Noah Rogers can break out. He's a redshirt freshman as well. So I kind of go with the whole theme of like guys that are just going to kind of make their presence known at the college level. He's really, really elite route runner. You already know that Clemson is really focused on Kevin Concepcion. This is going to open up a lane for somebody else to make a play. I'm going to go Noah Rogers on the outside, hitting a deep shot maybe and getting downfield.
Yeah, I like that. I like that pick. Whether it can be effective long-term or not, Louisiana Tech certainly showed a blueprint for trying to contain KC a little bit, right? I think KC is too good to be taken out of every game like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Clemson try some similar stuff. And so I'm also going to pick an outside receiver, and I'm going to go with Dakari Collins in his return to Clemson. He downplayed it this week. It's just another game for him. But he played for the Tigers to start his college career before transferring to NC State. And last game, he had his best performance of the season so far, 3 catches for 55 yards. It looked like him and CJ had just a good, consistent connection. Their timing was really, really good. And I think he's going to come in. He's going to make some big plays and haul in his first touchdown of the year. There you go. That's my prediction. I think big day for Dakari Collins. I think he's done good as a blocker this year, and he's been a reliable pass catcher, and we'll see him more involved in the offense than we have in the past couple of weeks because, if teams sell out to stop KC, that was a strategy that a lot of teams tried last year where you could leave the receivers, the outside receivers, the tight end in single coverage and usually fare okay. This year, Dakari Collins, Noah Rogers, Wesley Grimes, Justin Jolie, and everyone else are too talented to do that. And now they have to go prove it. If Clemson sells out to stop KC, they're going to have to make plays. So I think we're on the right track here, Noah. I think it's going to be a big day for a outside receiver. We'll just see which one it ends up being. Wrapping up with defense, who do you think is going to lead the team in tackles? Last week it was Caden Fordham. Breakout game for him. He had a fumble recovery, a huge tackle for loss, and a goal line situation. He was just really, really good. Double-digit tackles for the pack. You think he's going to repeat, or are you going to go with someone else here?
I'm going to go with him repeating, and I'm going to go on the record that he's going to get an interception because he's dropped one in 2 games in a row, or 2 of the 3 games this year. He dropped one against Western Carolina and then got ejected a couple plays later for targeting. Dropped one to start the second half, which may have been good he dropped it because then DK Coffin had a pick 6 right after. So anyway, I think he leads the team in tackles this week. Dave Dorn on the radio show yesterday kind of equated him to Peyton Wilson in the way that he plays and has a motor for the ball now, his effort on the field. Give me Caden Fordham to step up big in a game that really matters for Cincinnati State team.
I agree. I'm also picking Caden Fordham here. It's going to be a game where he needs to step up. There's going to be a lot of head-on-head collisions with him and Phil Maffa, and Caden Fordham needs to win those battles Saturday afternoon. So if he does, he could have a huge day, tons of tackles. Sean Brown gets an honorable mention here because his breakout game last year was against Clemson when he had to move down from safety to linebacker and, was just all over the final drive and led NC State in tackles that day. But I'll go with Caden Fordham as well. And all right, let's wrap up the show today with our final score predictions, Noah. Again, NC State, opportunity to make a statement. opportunity to pick up their first ranked win of the season and their first road win in their first road opportunity. NC State hasn't won in Death Valley in a long time. They've won 2 of their 3 past games against Clemson. A lot of things you can argue in either direction here, but at the end of the day, NC State is a 20.5 point underdog. Noah, what is your final score prediction for this matchup?
35-20 for the Tigers. I do think NC State covers the 20-point spread, but I think they just run out of gas in the second half, and Clemson's able to pull away.
Yeah, I'm similar line of thinking here. I had 38-24 Clemson wins. Until I see, the next step from the rushing attack, I think it's going to be hard for the Pack to take much pressure off of CJ Bailey, and I don't think you can realistically hope to win a game relying entirely on your passing offense in Death Valley. It's just they're too well coached, too talented. I think it could be a similar result to Tennessee without the snowballing effect. I think NC State ends up losing this one by a couple scores, but like I said at the top of the show, 20 points, it's a lot of points. So I think they will keep it close-ish, but will fall once things kind of unravel towards the end. But hey, who knows? That's why you play the games, folks. NC State could shock the world, could usher in a new era with CJ Bailey, and we'll find out shortly after noon on Saturday afternoon. All right, thanks, folks, for joining today's show. That's it from us. We will be back Sunday to recap everything that happens against the Tigers, and we will talk to you then. Thank you all, and check us out on the wolfpacker.com this weekend. Have a good one, folks.